Hello again, it's Ducky, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the steps of how to play Magic. So once you have a friend and you have a couple of decks, this is how you're actually going to play the game. So at first you're both going to start with 20 life, and then you'll decide which one of you is going to go first. One ordinary way to do this is by rolling some 6-sided die and either going high roll or low roll or whatever the agreed upon thing is, and using that to decide which one of you will be the player who goes first. And next, each player will present their decks to their opponent, where the opponent will commonly cut, shuffle, or do nothing. It's just important that you follow this step to allow your opponent to cut your deck if they choose to. Then you draw your opening hand of 7 cards. Now in this example, I've set up a hand that has 3 creatures, an instant spell, and 3 lands. It's just an example, but if you draw your first 7 cards and they don't have a good mix of lands and spells, then you can do what's called a mulligan. If you do choose to mulligan, you will reshuffle your deck. You'll shuffle your hand back into your deck, give it a couple more shuffles, you'll present it to your opponent again for them to cut again. And once they've done that, you will then draw 6 cards. Now, if your next 6 cards are a good hand that have basically the things you will want to start a game of Magic with, then you'll do something called a scry, meaning you'll look at the top card of your library and decide if you want to leave it on top or put it on the bottom of your library. It's important to know that if your next 6 cards still don't have a playable hand, you can continue to mulligan, but you draw 1 less card each time. Now here are the phases for each turn in a game of Magic. We'll go through each of them next. My opponent won the die roll, so they're going to go first. But one of the downsides to going first is that you skip your first beginning phase and go straight to your main phase. Lands have to be played during the main phase, and my opponent played 1 land and then passed the turn. To start my first turn, I have nothing to untap and nothing to upkeep, so I go straight to my draw step, and then I start my first main phase by playing a land. Since I can't play anything else, then I'll pass the turn. For the beginning of my opponent's second turn, they have nothing to untap or upkeep, so they'll draw their card for turn, and then for their main phase, they'll play a land, and then tap both lands to play a creature. Anytime a creature enters the battlefield, it has summoning sickness. This means that it cannot be tapped for activated abilities or for attacking during its first turn on the battlefield. And since my opponent can't attack and all of their lands are tapped, they will pass the turn. As I start my second turn, I have nothing to untap or upkeep, so I'll go straight to my draw step, and then in my main phase I'll play a land for turn and I'll tap 2 mana to play a creature. Now I can't attack or play any other spells, so I will also pass the turn. Now my opponent will start their third turn. They have their untap, then upkeep, then they draw, and then they start their first main phase. In this case, they'll play a land and then move to the combat phase. Just like the beginning phase, the combat phase also has several steps. The beginning of combat step is where a lot of certain effects may trigger. During the Declare Attacker step, you will clearly identify which of your creatures will be attacking your opponent. At this point, you have to tap your attacking creatures. During the Declare Blockers step, your opponent can select any untapped creature and identify which attacking creature, it's going to block. During the combat damage step, each creature deals damage equal to its power at the exact same time. So in this case, both creatures deal 2 damage to each other and they both die. Some effects may trigger at the end of combat, so it's important to know that that step exists. During my opponent's second main phase, they will use their remaining untapped land to cast 1 more creature before going to the ending phase. In the ending phase, there are 2 steps, the end step and the cleanup step. Certain things may trigger during the end step, or your opponent may cast an instant at the end of your turn. In the cleanup step, damage on living creatures will be removed, effects will go away, and if you have more than 7 cards in hand, you'll have to discard until you have 7. So these are the basic phases of every turn in a game of Magic. I hope you have fun learning to play, and I'll see you next time. Bye!